Howdy gamers, let's talk about the runes for Ornn top lane and mid lane, I suppose. The runes really do transition into the mid lane, similar to how they do in the top lane. His only real keystone options are Grasp of the Undying and Unsealed Spellbook. Grasp of the Undying gives you an extra trading tool in the top lane mostly, but mostly just in melee matchups. As with Grasp of the Undying, every 4 seconds you're in combat, your next basic attack will deal bonus magic damage equal to 4% of your max health, heal you for 2% of your max health, and then permanently increase your health by 5. This makes it so that your full burst onto someone deals a little bit more damage, or just your one auto trades on them would as well. It makes your not fully committed trades where you're not spinning the E on the enemy champion a bit better, but I don't think it's needed in most top lane matchups. Um, I can't think of one in which that if you're not already winning like levels 1 to 6, or if you're not winning those levels early with grasp, um, or just in those matchups in general, it's like you're going to be winning those early anyways. So if you run Unsealed Spellbook, you just inevitably have a better scaling option, as the access to summoner spells heavily outweighs what Grasp can offer in team fights and just in a 1v1 situation. Because if you're swapping to Ignite level 6, you're going to be dealing more damage than Grasp could deal. And then it's the same thing. You can be blocking damage, you can be dodging damage with all the summoner spells that are offered. With Grasp, though, it is easier, but it's only really useful into melee matchups. But I just think you lose out on so much whenever you do run this. So I wouldn't recommend it, but if you were to run it, this would be your best bet, as Grasp in combination with Bone Plating would make melee matchups for you easier, as Bone Plating is going to be effectively giving you more HP. With Bone Plating, after you take damage from an enemy champion, the next 3 spells or attacks against you deal 30 to 60 based on your level less, and then Bone Plating is on a 45-second cooldown. So this, in combination with Grasp of the Undying, is going to give you more effective HP to work with, but in a lot of cases and in a lot of lanes, you're better off conceding to trade, and just letting the wave either come into you and look to freeze that versus trying to fight the enemy champion on cooldown. The few lanes in which I suppose Grasp is going to give you value would be lanes such as um, Irelia, maybe Tryndamere. Um, Usually champions that can fight you levels 1 to 5. Probably Fiora it would help you against. Um, and that's about it. Like stronger lanes like Darius, where they have the potential to just run you down levels 1 to 6, especially if they're running something like Ghost, you might as well concede and then run Unsealed Spellbook. If you are running the grass page, I think you're best off going with Inspiration second with Free Boots and Cosmic Insight. You get a little bit of scaling from this, as you get the boots for free at 12 minutes, and Ornn doesn't need to purchase boots up until that point. And then with Cosmic Insight, the 5% CDR does go a long way, giving you 5% cooldown reduction on your abilities and summoner spells. And then with that, you get more W and Q rotations off. You also have a scaling option in Sorcery second with something like Null Orb and Transcendence. Null Orb giving you a magic damage shield, so into matchups such as Mordekaiser, Rumble, etc., Nullifying Orb gives you pretty good value. And then with Transcendence, you gain a scaling option, and since you're playing in the top lane, you're going to be getting the second most levels in the game under the mid laner. So you're going to get to level 10 really quickly. And then once you get to level 10, Transcendence is going to be giving you 10% cooldown reduction for free. So this, in combination with Abyssal Mask, puts you at a really nice spot, as you would be missing out on damage if you're not building Sunfire early, and if you're playing into these AP matchups, then you want to build Abyssal Mask early. But then through having the cooldown reduction through Transcendence, and then also from the Rune Shard, and then also through completing Abyssal Mask, you have more rotations of your W and Q to play off, therefore making up for that damage loss. And then you also would have the option of Monoflow Ban, but you just don't need the Monoflow Ban. You have so many ways to itemize mana with Ornn. It does feel nice in the laning phase, and if you're looking for an easier lane, Bone Plating, Grasp of the Undying, and Monoflow is going to correct a lot of Ornn's mistakes and then make the lane work regardless, but I don't think that's really what you should be looking to do. Versus the like amplification to proper play that you can have on Ornn otherwise. For the adaptive runes, you want to run double resistances based on your matchup. So if you're playing into an AD matchup, champions like Irelia, Camille, Set, etc. The double armor is going to be giving you immediate value, and since you can itemize a Doran shield or a ruby crystal really early, missing out on the scaling health doesn't really matter. And then if you're playing into an AP matchup, the same is also true for the double magic resist, as it's going to be going pretty far. If you're playing into like a mixed matchup, champions like Akali, Kale, you could run armor and magic resist. It's completely fine. And then the cooldown reduction shard is kind of unique, as most champions don't run it. But with Ornn, you get a lot of levels, and then the cooldown is converted into more damage than the attack speed or adaptive force, whatever be given you. So that's why you would look to run that. So with the grass page, like, it makes things easier. It's only really useful into melee matchups, and I don't think that it's even necessary in those matchups, as like once you're on cooldown with Ornn too, just trading auto attacks and getting, like, let's say 2 grass procs off in the duration of an all-in, it's like healing you maybe 40 and then dealing about 40 damage. Is it really that crazy? Versus an ignite, versus a ghost, a cleanse, a barrier, a heal. So with Unsealed Spellbook, you get access to swap your summoner spells. Your first swap is at 6 minutes, and then that builds up throughout the game and through how many summoner spells you swap. And then with Unsealed Spellbook, even just level 6, at 6 minutes, you're going to have access to an ignite to solo kill your lane. And then past that, you have access to an exhaust, a heal, a ghost, a cleanse, a barrier. And with those, you gain a lot of utility in not only the laning phase, but whenever you TP into fights as well. Then having access to those other summoner spells can not only be useful for yourself, but also for your team. If you have something like heal and exhaust, it goes so much further than Grasp of the Undying is going to go in a lot of cases. With Unsealed Spellbook, it puts you in the inspiration tree, so again, your better option is going to be magical footwear. You save 300 gold on the boots, and you don't need to purchase them before even the latest at 12 minutes that you can't purchase them if you run this rune. And then with perfect timing, you don't really build into a stopwatch item, and then with the nerf to it at 14 minutes, Ornn just doesn't need it to like survive anything. The third rune would be Biscuit Delivery, giving you a biscuit every 2 minutes until 6. Consuming a biscuit restores 10% of your missing health and mana, and then grants you an additional 50 mana every time you sell or consume a biscuit. So that helps offset Ornn's mana cost. Is basically the better version of Mana Flow Ban, where you don't have to build a mana item early, but then you still get the benefit of having the maximum mana increase. And then for the fourth rune, it's going to be Cosmic Insight, again giving you 5% cooldown reduction on your abilities, summoner spells, and your items, but you never really use the item part unless you're building something like Locket. And then I think for your secondary runes, you have a fine option in Nimbus Cloak Transcendence. Since you have so many more summoner spells, Nimbus Cloak gains a lot more functionality, as whenever you cast a summoner spell, you gain bonus movement speed that lasts for 2.5 seconds. And then with that, if you're igniting someone using Barrier Heal, Ghost, Cleanse, etc. with Unsealed Spellbook, then you can just run them down or run away from them. So you can dodge a lot of damage with this if you're running away or repositioning. And then you can also create situations in which you can stay on targets that you otherwise wouldn't be able to by the movement speed gained as you cast a summoner spell. So a ton of utility in Nimbus Cloak. And then with that, you can get Transcendence as well, which is going to give you, again, that 10% cooldown reduction, which goes a long way for Ornn top lane. You could also run Resolve secondary, which is the most common. But all you really get from here is either Conditioning Overgrowth, giving you 2 scaling options for your health and armor and magic resist. But Ornn already scales so hard that I don't see these two making that big of a difference in a lot of cases, versus getting effectively more damage from the cooldown from Transcendence, and then potentially damage from Nimbus Cloak. But then you're also potentially going to be able to dodge out on a lot of damage because of Nimbus Cloak. Nimbus Cloak also helps you whenever you're splitting, as if you're running a Ghost and a Nimbus Cloak, even if you're getting 3-man ganked, you might actually be able to get out of it. So you just make Ornn a way different champion by having access to that, versus having more stats and then more health, as Ornn already has enough of those. So pretty similar to Grasp. I think this is the easier option for Ornn, but with how this champion works and how much stats he has behind him and how much damage he can deal, I think that Nimbus Cloak and Transcendence is just better in a lot of cases. There are a few lanes that would completely beat you as Ornn, where in the early game, something like bone plating might be helping you more. Or maybe Second Wind, as with Second Wind, after you take damage from an enemy champion, you heal for 4% of your missing health, plus 6 over 10. So against champions like Kale, maybe Zac, Second Wind would go pretty far, and then you'd also kind of be matching their scaling with Overgrowth a bit. But yeah, the utility from Nimbus Cloak is really hard to gauge, but then the utility from the 10% cooldown reduction in combination with your itemization and the cooldown reduction from the shards just goes a long way with Ornn, because if you just feel it once where you cast one rotation of your QWE and then you have a second rotation of your QW, it's just way more damage than the enemy's like used to. So yeah, the default that I would recommend would be this, as gives you so much functionality on Ornn versus just a little bit more tankiness, as Ornn's already tanky enough. I don't think he exploits those runes as hard as other champions could. He does, like, he gets a lot of numbers, don't get me wrong. He gets a lot of numbers from conditioning and overgrowth. But does he need them? In a lot of cases, man, does he need them? He's already surviving. He's either like in the fight or he's not. And then where he has so much CC, that also interrupts a lot of instances of damage. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Ornn's runes. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I answer literally all of them. If this video helped you, leaving a like on the video helps me. And if you're interested in watching me play or talk about League of Legends, you can check out my Twitch. It's twitch.tv/SawyerNelson. I actually play a bit of Ornn. I love this fucking champion. He's so hilariously broken. Once you see this Nimbus Cloak in action too, it's so funny, man. Like, you can just run away or you can run into them. It's so crazy. People aren't used to seeing Ornn move. It's like, you know, it's like some animal that's really big, and then when they finally move, people are like, what? Like when you see a hippo run or something, you know? Or an elephant. Like, what is that, man? What is that? He's not supposed to move. What is that?